Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sexy Business Podcast. As always, I'm Lewd Neko, and joining me is Spooky Dangerous.
Hello.
And today we're going to be doing another sort of game centric, I guess, review of sorts. And we are going to be looking at the gender bendy Metrovania Flipwitch Forbidden Sex Hex.
This is one that I really liked the idea of. It shown up a few times in the previous content we've made, like Hentai Master Art. I think said it was his game of the year or something. Like it came highly
Mm-hmm.
regarded. And obviously, I like a lot of the gender play and stereotype kind of concept when it comes to these kind of games. And so we both picked it up. You have admittedly played it a lot longer than I have. I put 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours at the end into playing through. So I have not finished the game, but I played quite a bit of it, and I think my general experience with how things went will be interesting to a potential buyer. But I am curious to hear about your overview. How did everything go? What were some of the parts that you really liked? How did it all come together for you?
Yeah, so in comparison, I have 12 hours clocked in. I'd say this is about a 10-ish or so hour game. I streamed it the first two times I played it, which added some extra time. Because as I found out, I can't play Metroidvanias and stream. I was doing really bad when I streamed this, and I was like, oh, I'm just terrible at this kind of game. And then I ended up playing the rest of it off stream just so I could get through things faster. And I did great. I was having a lot of fun, and I was dying significantly less. So I actually don't play a lot of Metroidvanias in general. Like I've never beaten Metroid or Castlevania. I think I tried them when I was a kid and I didn't like them. And I will admit, like part of the draw for me from this game was it was a Metroidvania that had the sexy things to keep me playing. Like it was very much like kind of like carrot on the end of the stick for me to chase after. But I ended up enjoying the gameplay. It's not going to be, I think, too terribly complex. I think if you're familiar to this genre, I wouldn't expect anything that's going to be super challenging or super like unique per se. The most unique thing is, of course, the flip witch mechanic. So essentially, you can flip between your boy form and your girl form. And the biggest thing this impacts is there are certain blocks that will only appear if you're in girl form. There are certain areas that you can only pass through depending on gender. A couple of the bosses have attacks that are gender based. So, like, a boss will summon two pink orbs and a blue orb. So, you have to flip your genders as they come at you so that it matches basically the color. And then the other big thing that I think this adds to the sex content is that you have sort of a mix of scenes where the female protagonist is getting fucked, and then you have some scenes where the male protagonist is fucking various of the female protagonists. Though with that kind of comes one of my big critiques of the game, although this is more of a personal critique than something I would apply across the board, is it's very heterosexual. For a game that is about gender bending, I think a lot of people in this genre would expect there to be like fuda content, like a little bit more pegging, like more of a focus on both like the men being sexualized and the women being sexualized. But no, this is very much like you're there to look at the women. And you'll notice that in the sex scenes, if you're the boy character, the boy witch, and you get into a sex scene, then like most of the times he's sort of just like the generic male body. And the focus is always going to be on the female character you're fucking, usually like a monster girl of some sort. Whereas on the other hand, like for example, in our background, we have this very cute puppy boy, right? I really like this puppy boy character, but in every scene with him, he's just another generic male body fucking the female protagonist. So I don't get anything out of that. I don't get to see the actual cute boy. Really, the only thing it changes is the kind of dialogue you get during the sex scenes. Most of the sex scenes are going to be pretty much the same. So you're going to have like a slow thrust animation, a fast thrust animation, and then like the come animation with a couple of lines of dialogue in between. I think there's about like 60 or so like proper scenes, so it does have a good amount. Although this is also including some of the game over screens, so maybe pare that down to like probably I would guess around 40-ish like actual sex scenes, maybe like 15 20-ish or so of the game over screens. And then the other kind of sexual content you'll get from this game is there's these little gachapon machines. Basically, you can find these silver coins if you explore and find hidden areas, and each of the gachapon machines is themed after a certain kind of monster girl. So there's like a cat girl one, there's like an Oni demon sort of one, there's a bunny girl one, and you can unlock sort of short little loops of like little tiny animations from these machines. And I think that's what makes up the 100 or so total. So it does say it has like over 100 plus on the Steam page, which is technically true. Just keep in mind, like, not all the animations are sort of made equal or as thorough when it comes to this game.
I mean, which makes sense. A lot of this kind of genre is going to have padding, kind of generally, but there's also lots of just casual nudity. Like, not everything is in a
Yeah.
scene like you would kind of expect something like a visual novel. There's a lot of just as you're running around, a lot of the enemies just have big wobbly titties. Most of the bosses, when you go and encounter them, they are like 3/4 of the screen and have a massive wobbly rack. But like also it has kind of sound effects that goes along with it. Pretty much every hit is like big moans. There's just fucking moaning 24/7 playing this game. Um,
Yeah, this is a headphones kind of game. I have a roommate right
yeah,
now, and the first like time I played it on my own, I had my headphones off, and I was like, actually, I should put those on.
yeah. It's very for a person that doesn't actually like adult content with sound. Playing this with sound was kind of cursed because just like moaning nonstop. When you one of the I think it's the Goblin Queen. Her main hitbox is her rack, and whenever you hit it, it makes a wobbly noise, and it's just so hard to pay attention to the fight when that's happening. It
Okay,
really
but like her
does.
Brooklyn accent though.
I liked that a lot. I liked that a
Yeah,
lot.
so I'm pretty sure all of the bosses have like a couple of voice lines, maybe some of the minor characters too, and that was something I really enjoyed. Yeah, so the first boss is like this goblin lady, and she has this like extreme Brooklyn accent. She's like basically threatening you, like I'm gonna stab ya, and it's just so good. Like it was just so like unexpected, but kind of hot. I'm like, do I have a thing for like women with like heavy Brooklyn accents now?
Angry Brooklyn woman adding to my attraction chart. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It does weirdly come together in a way that just does make the character sexier, which me being threatened with death doesn't normally do for me, I guess. Um, but
I will say there was also some like pretty good boss design. You only got to see, I think, like, was it just the Goblin Queen you got to see?
and the giant fairy, I think that's it.
Okay,
I got
yeah. So
stuck in the
there's
ghost castle.
the Ghost Castle was a little confusing. Um, so there's like basically like I think 6 major bosses, and then like the final boss. But there are a bunch of like minor bosses as well. One of my favorites. I guess there's gonna be some spoilers in this game, so sorry if you were really invested in the story or characters of this game. But you know, you start off with sort of your generic forest area, you have a ghost themed area, then you have a hell themed area that kind of also has like a club theme. It's like Club Succubus is where you end up going. Then you have a heaven themed area. Um, there was also like some minor areas. There's like a mushroom forest and a slime area. There's a rat dungeon area. And then the final boss is sort of like Egyptian themed. But one of my favorites, so when you go to heaven, the boss you fight there is sort of like this like two personality angel. So like her first personality is like this like dominatrix sort of angel who's gonna like punish you for being a sinner. But then she switches during the fight and turns into her masochist side. And the thing with the masochist is gameplay wise, you can't hit her during that part of the battle because it heals her. And every
Switches.
time she switches, she'll say something like, "Ooh, harder!" Like,
That's really funny.
and and when you beat her, you sort of force her into submission, and she stays as like the masochist one, and is like, "Oh, mistress, go ahead and take the like chaos key," which are sort of the
Mm.
pieces of the Triforce you're essentially collecting this whole game. But really fun. She also had like a really cute design. She has like half pink, half blue hair, which I liked. That was like probably one of my favorite parts was just seeing the character designs. I thought they were very like creative. There's a lot of really memorable, brightly colored designs, which is nice.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And how would you rate the difficulty as a non-Metroid player?
Hmm.
Do you think it was hard? Could you play it one-handed?
I don't think this is a game that you could play one-handed. I'd be impressed if someone can. Good for you. Um, as far as difficulty goes, I was playing on normal. I believe there is also, like, if I remember, an easy difficulty at the beginning. I think it gives you an option, which I think just lowers the amount of like damage you take or something like that. The thing that happens is so when I first started playing, it's really hard because you have very limited heals, and you don't have like all of your abilities and stuff yet. But as you do side quests, so there's lots of side quests that you'll encounter. Most of them are costume based. Like you need to have a certain costume to get this character to fuck you, and that's the side quest. Some of them are fetch quests where you need to find an item and bring it back to a certain character. Some of them are like, oh, you have to defeat this mini boss or X amount of this enemy. But as you collect those, then the witch sensei that the game sort of starts you off with will upgrade you, and you'll get upgrades to like your health and your magic and the amount of heals you can do. And like by the end of the game, I had like 12 heals I could use. So and plus I had like more HP. And now of course at this point in the game, most of the enemies could theoretically kill me in like 2 hits. So if I got hit, I had to heal. Um but it did make the game a lot less scary than it was when I was first playing it, and I was constantly worried about like losing progress by dying. Because like the final boss, for example, is pretty difficult, but it only took me, I think, 2 tries. Um, so,
That's
and
not
which is
bad.
good for me. I didn't want to be frustrated by this game. But if you're expecting like a really difficult or challenging Metroidvania, I think you would be disappointed. If you're just looking for sort of a fun game to spend a weekend with and have a little bit of fun platformers, have some sexy pixel art, then I think this game would be up your alley.
So I think I should run through my experience with the game because it was a bit weird and different. So I did choose the super easy difficulty because I'm like, all I want to do is jerk my shit. I don't want to have to focus too hard. If this is a really hard Metroidvania, I don't want to be stressing too hard about trying to actually do the gameplay. I just want to get a vibe for what the adult content is like. And what that gives you is 2 items that you can equip immediately that regenerate your health and magic over time, uh, and makes it really hard to die, like really hard to die. And so I played through. I did the giant fairy. That wasn't too hard. I did the goblin queen, and then I got to the ghost castle. Got halfway through the ghost castle, and was like, I've actually encountered 0 adult scenes. The only NSFW content in this game so far has been, the wobbling overworld titties of like the giant fairy or the goblin queen or whatever. Is that it? Is that all that's there to offer? And I mentioned this to Neko, and Neko's like, "Kill yourself right now in the game, please." Um,
In
in
Minecraft.
Minecraft, in Flipwitch. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And then I get the game over screen where I get to see my character doing stuff. And I'm like, oh, I at no point would have known this was a thing. And so I literally, and because there's a specific thing that you mentioned as well, where the gallery doesn't save unless if you progress after dying, and because I just killed myself and then quit because that was the only goal I had at the time, um, I actually have a gallery with no objects in it, which I thought was really strange for me to play 90 minutes or something to get to that point, and then I've just encountered no scenes, like no
But I
content whatsoever. And so you can imagine I'm a bit confused having played in this far on what I was told would be an adult game. But I wasn't disappointed because the actual Metroidvania content was really good. Like I was just enjoying actually playing through, fighting all of the things, doing all of the platforming, exploring and finding the different areas, seeing what the different quests were, talking to different people. But to get to 90 minutes and being like, wasn't this literally an SFW game? Why have I encountered like zero content? And pixel art style isn't really big on the things that make me come anyway. So I'm like, even if I did encounter a whole bunch of stuff from this point, is it really going to rate highly as an adult game? So I was a bit confused. I kind of got to a point where I was like, well, I just think that this is a like the designer has made a good Metroidvania, and then because they felt that maybe the Steam market was just so flooded with this type of game that they needed something new and different as like a marketing stunt or like a way to hook
Mm.
people and get them excited about what makes this game different, and they added NSFW content, but not in a way that makes it compete well against other NSFW games like the visual novel, which just is better at delivering a more immersive, consistent, horny experience. And so, I don't know. I don't think it is a bad game. I think it is a good Metroidvania game. I think it is bad at conveying the NSFW content. Because if all of it is delivered to me in When I Die, I'm too much of a god gamer and that's never going to happen. I'm never going to see anything. Or if it's just in completing the quests, then they're all really far away from each other. Like, to get the outfits, they cost like 500 gold or something. The first ones that you encounter, and your gold per minute is like 20.
It
uh,
gets better like throughout the game. There's a accessory you can get pretty early on that increases money drops. So
okay,
I suggest getting that one, and that one helped a lot. And then also like, especially once you get into like the ghost mansion, you're doing like some backtracking and like you have to redefeat some enemies anyways. So
yeah,
you're able to kind of naturally grind. Like I didn't have to ever go out and like actively grind. I would just be like, I'm gonna come back for that costume when I have money. And as you explore, especially towards the end of the game, there's a lot of chests just lying around that have like hundreds of gold. So it's like kind of like towards the end, you end up going back to a lot of places and being able to get those kinds of outfits. So as someone who's seen like more of the lewd content, I think I got all of the side quests. I was only missing a couple of scenes. Like I might have been missing like one or two side quests, or maybe some of the game overs didn't technically save. Um, One thing I would warn is there's a lot of scenes that are hand and mouth and tit stuff and not penetration.
mm,
Like I think relative to what people might expect from this game, there's a relatively low amount of penetration, or at least like straightforward penetration. There's a lot of like sort of more like there's like some toys, there's some lesbian content. There is one strap-on scene, for what that's worth.
but
One.
it's girl on girl. I take it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you actually get to the female witch character, the main character, gets to top one of the bunny girls. This is a pretty late game scene too. Um, but there's like especially like it's like especially with some of these characters that you have multiple scenes like the cowgirl for instance, you find her in the first area, you give her the bell that makes her move to the sort of like cabaret club thing they have, and I think she has two or three more quests that you get throughout the game that deal with her. So it's like, oh, first you get a hand scene with her, and then I think you get a tit scene with her, and then you get to the penetration. With some of them, like you only get a hand scene or you only get a mouth scene. Like I was disappointed that there was like I think a hand job scene with like the dog boy, and I was just kind of like, I don't need this. Like I don't know. I feel like
Yeah,
maybe I'm just like negative towards foreplay, but like I'm not gonna like orgasm to a hand job. Like I want the good
yeah.
stuff.
Especially if you've spent all this time going through the quest to then just get a full play scene, to then have to go back and start the next quest before you see another different scene, makes me think
Hmm.
that the adult content is way too sparse to like I don't know goon to. Maybe you have to play through the game, get a 100% complete, come back, look at the gallery, and then jerk your shit,
Yeah.
which is like 12 hours limp invested to then finally try and crank one out, which I think is still kind of rough. Like, I think it just has a formula problem where if you are playing this game with the intention of blasting ropes, then perhaps you're going to have a problem. If you're playing this game because it's a good Metroidvania, and you should because it is, then you're going to get exactly what you expect. But I haven't actually looked at the reviews or the comments on the Steam page or anything. Have you had a look at any of that kind of stuff? Because I wonder if people are complaining about the adult content or anything like that. Because that's probably one of the main complaints. Usually in Steam comments, it's like, this was horrible, or Giga Chad React meme, yes, I play NSFW games on main, uh, and like that kind of
See,
thing.
it seems like overall people generally like this game. Like I kind of took a look at like F95 and some comments on Reddit and some of the Steam reviews. Most of the negative ones are usually negative because they're Metroidvania players and they're like, this was pretty mid mechanics
Yeah,
wise.
okay. But you don't
Or
want it
like
to
some
be too
people.
complicated. You want it to be easy enough for someone like you, more
Yeah.
casual, not a Metroidvania is my life and my blood, to be able to come and play it and have a good time and engage with the story and engage with some of the adult content, which is the point of marketing it to this different audience rather than marketing it to a incredibly dedicated Metroidvania audience. Like I feel like Metroidvania players coming to this and being like, "Duh, I'm upset. It's not exactly what I wanted," is kind of bullshit. Because it's like watching the Teletubbies and being like, "Damn, there really wasn't much storytelling, or the cohesive narrative just wasn't there," and I switched off. It's like, well, no shit, you're in the wrong place for that kind of thing.
Yeah, the only other like negatives is I've seen some people say it's overpriced. So it's 15 USD. And some people are like, well, it's only a 8 to 10 hour playthrough, so it should be longer to be $15, which I disagree with. I think
I think it's
relative to
fine.
the amount and kind of content, I think that's an appropriate price. Plus I'm sure it goes on sale for 20% off during each sale, so you can probably get it for like $12 to $10. And I think it's well worthwhile at that point. I don't think all games need to be super long. I actually really enjoyed that this was a game that I could play all of it in like a weekend. I was like, with how like limited my time is right now, that was actually wonderful. One thing we haven't talked about, this game has a ripping soundtrack.
Oh
It
yeah.
has amazing fucking music. It has these great boss themes, like really like thematic retro like world themes for each of the different areas. Like there's some songs from this like I'm gonna probably add to like my like studying playlist because it's just really good. So that's one thing that I will say is like I think the aesthetics and like just the look and feel of this game is like really well done, and that's where like a lot of the price point comes for me. Like straight up, if this game didn't have sex in it, like it was just like lewd or just like kind of like etchy, I would still buy this for the price. Like I thought it was fun. This is actually probably a really good game, I think, for getting people into porn games. I think someone who's maybe like a little like I don't want to play a visual novel or I don't want a game that's like nonstop kinky sex. I think this would be approachable to them because it is a little like more vanilla. Like it has some kinky stuff. It has like the monster girls, but nothing crazy. Like even like the defeat screens, like they're not hardcore non-con. Like all of the characters look like they're having a great time when they're being quote unquote defeated, so there's nothing sort of scary in that way. And it has like some fun gameplay. So I think if like maybe you have a friend who's been curious about these kinds of games, but isn't too sure, like this would be a good way to get them into it and be like, hey, you can have a fun time playing these games, even if you're not stroking it the entire time.
Yeah, it does feel like a player profile, right? Because some people will be like, "Oh, I don't want to play a visual novel because I don't want to have to read 30,000 words to then fuck someone or whatever," you know. And I get that. Or the I don't want to play the like like the classic Newgrounds click game of the toggle through the speeds and the positions and the outfits, and you're like, because there's no
Yeah.
story there or whatever. I feel like this is a nice medium kind of a thing where like you can just be focusing on the game, you can interact with the characters and get a little bit of the narrative and kind of easily follow along what's happening and like what's happening to your character, and you get to explore a lot, and you kind of control the pacing a bit because if you're like, oh, I want more horny times, you can go and spend all of the silver coins in the gachapon, or you can go and you go, oh, maybe now I go side questing and and play through that way, or I just go and game over a bunch of times, assuming that hasn't happened already. So it does feel like it's trying to hit a specific audience. Like it does feel like it was crafted with a specific vision in mind. because going insane on stuff like the visual style, like all the backgrounds are insanely gorgeous. And
Hmm.
then if you used an equivalency of a lot of RPG Maker games, which do have nice pixel art backgrounds, whenever it comes to the adult content, they always have these really high content quality 2D images, right? Which is more akin to the visual novel style. But then you're let down because the gameplay is dog shit, right? This kind of solves that problem because the gameplay part is really good. Like it's got the Metroidvania formula. You're exploring, wandering around, you're shooting things, and you're fighting stuff. So it fixes that problem. And then you have the really nice high quality background art, the really nice high quality sound design and music, which tells me that they were going to make a good Metroidvania game, regardless of if there was sex in it. But then for me, all of these sexy art in the pixel style just doesn't quite like do that for me. Like I don't find it sexy enough to be interesting. Nothing is highly detailed enough. Everything is really small also. So it's not like the bosses like the giant fairy and the goblin queen are 3/4 of the screen. And that's like really the only time that you really do get to see good detail in something because they are so large. And even then, it's both of them are waist up. Um, so it is interesting in how they've cultivated this in particular. It does feel like they went to make a Metroidvania and then they were like, this is not going to cut it. Let's pivot and add sex to the game and then, come up with these new different, locations and scenarios. And then, like, you could have easily had made the Ghost Mansion as the first location and trying to make a hardcore Metroidvania and then go, okay, we change the character, we add a bit of story, we move this further up in the thing, we add a tutorial level, which is like a nice forest, and then we add sex to it, and then bam, we have a seller now all of a sudden. Um,
Yeah. I will say this is also, I believe, this developer's like first game. This like team. They might have done like maybe one other minor game, but at the very least, this is like their first Steam game. And I think as like a proof of concept, I think what this shows us and like looking at the reviews is like there is a desire for games that are more gameplay focused but have sexual content. Because like 90% of the reviews are like, I bought this because there was boobs in it and I really liked the gameplay, and that's awesome. I think it's also showing a lot of like people who are new to this genre or like especially Western fans that like there are porn games that have good gameplay or
mm,
have extensive gameplay. I mean, everybody I feel like should play Rants once. We should do an episode of Rants at some point because it's like the kind of like grandfather of like porn games, and it actually has a pretty detailed RPG system for like a more visual novel type game. So like just to go to kind of show that these kinds of games are out there. It's not all just like visual novels and simulation games if you look for them, because there are other games I know that are kind of similar in format to this one, where like they have those intense platformer sections or they have actual RPG mechanics. So if you want more of those kinds of games, you know, sort of support those kinds of developers.
yeah, and I want to see more developers move in the direction of stuff like Cyberpunk, where you spend enough time with the character, you get to romance them, you do actually get to have sex with them, and then potentially open it up to the modding community to be able to expand on that, right? Rather than something like Skyrim, where all of the stuff is in script extender and the modding community and they build all this stuff and it looks horrendous and ridiculous and the models are insane. Same with Baldur's Gate now as well. But just to make like an actual narrative that naturally includes sex. Sex is a natural part of life. It's only the puritanical American point of view that sex should just be fucking never talked about or seen or anything like that. Should never be shown anywhere. Um, which makes telling a story weird because a lot of naturally when it comes to relationships and bonding with someone, a lot of those kind of things will include sex. And so when you are playing through a game and you're the whole thing is about dating someone or building an attachment with them or your best friend that you spend all this time with and then they've now left or whatever the narrative is, for you to just never ever be able to have access to that part of them is a big reason why a lot of these communities have insane fan fiction written. They have insane Rule 34 hits, right? Like, imagine how different Dan to Dan would be if we had full on sexual penetration in the first season. There would be so much less hentai drawn if that need was satisfied. And I'm saying, like, maybe Overwatch porn would have been much less crazy as a phenomenon if it was part of the game. If, you know, if you just had access to this kind of content created by the developers in the game, that the community wouldn't be so relied upon to be able to make these third-party things. And if we can move as gamers, as developers, to a scenario where we're just telling good stories, and then sometimes that good story will have sex in it, that will have erotic content. Some of the cornerstones of cartoons, like a lot of cartoons, like Adventure Time is a really good example, where it's really not trying to be one note. It is trying to make you cry sometimes. It is trying to make you laugh sometimes. It is trying to make you really content or wonder about the world, and it's trying to hit a lot of these different emotional compasses, but one of them is forbidden. All right? Like, we're never going to see Finn and Marceline fuck no matter how often I look it up on Rule 34. It's not going to happen in the show. Or more likely Princess Bubblegum and Marceline, because it's canon. Fuck you if you don't think so. But we're going to have to look it up online to find these things that make them happen, regardless of our attachments to their characters. So being able to create a story or a game like Flipwitch, where you as the character gets to encounter these things and meet these people, like the different bunny girls, like all the different goblin characters and stuff like that, and be able to engage with them romantically, as a lot of people wish to be doing, that's going to be fulfilling a need that the customer wants to have. And then hopefully, instead of us being this weird, haunted genre that no one wants to ever publicly talk about, it could be a more casual, normal thing. Because Cyberpunk is not a porn game, it just has sex in it. Mass Effect is not a porn game, it just has sex in it. And I feel like more games should be moving in that direction. Flipwitch should not be punished for having sex in it. It's a good Metroid game. And there should be other good Metroid games that just have sex in them. Imagine how many more games of the years that FromSoft could have made if you could fuck all the characters in any of the Souls games, right? Elden Ring, except the ring is being stretched out by me in particular, would definitely be my game of the year. And obviously I think about this kind of stuff a lot being a developer, but as a consumer, you vote with your money. You show people that, yes, I want to see massive wobbly milkers in all of the games that I play. I will buy them. Those developers continue to develop, get more skills, get bigger companies, make better products, and it will continue to exist. So, vote one, big wobbly milkers, and buy more porn games. It's on you. I'm relying on you to keep it alive. Keep the dream alive. Because this is the kind of thing that we dream about here on the Sexy Business Podcast. We talk a lot about the state of the industry, some of the cool games that are being made, some of the stuff that we get to have a look at to show off for you, and some of the cool things that we get to enjoy about that. And maybe encourage you to buy this game, Flipwitch in particular, or just to have a look at some of the other cool adult games on Steam and itch.io, because let me tell you, there is a lot. There's a lot of talented developers out there. There's a lot of talented storytellers out there making interesting games and interesting stories for you to play and check out. And I beseech you to do so. But while you're doing what you're told, you should also click the like and subscribe button, because that makes me happy. That gives me the happy cat. We love a happy Neko, because when you ring the bell for notifications, Neko gets to ring the collar bell, and that makes everybody happy. But then, if you have done all this, if you have been very well behaved, you will see us next week with another episode of the Sexy Business Podcast, where we get to bring you more cool and interesting, thoughtful content in the NSFW space. And hopefully, I will be seeing you then.